United States.
As a follow-up, Mr. Kemp, I mean, the biggest challenge, geopolitical challenge, geoeconomic challenge that the US is facing currently, irrespective of who is the president, is from People's Republic of China. I mean, there are some signals, and these are very nascent, and I also am very curious to understand. Do you think that he could reach a deal with China? Somebody as some people are mentioning, that raise the tariff in 6 months, reach a deal.
Well, I had a conversation with someone close to President Trump, and he pointed first to the 60% tariff threat, which then was removed. Right. It's now a 10% tariff. The Chinese have responded, calmly to that. He, through executive order, stopped the ban on TikTok for a 75-day review, so that gave that a breather. And so this person said, well, could it be Trump to China like Nixon to China? And he said, well, he likes making deals with big, powerful leaders around the world, and so he would rather make a deal with China than go to war with China. And so that's what he's going to try, and he'll try to make a deal through a mixture of carrots and sticks. And I said, well, who will be Kissinger? And he said, well, Elon Musk would like to be Kissinger. and you can laugh at that, but if you actually look at Musk's connections in China, they're deep, they're profound. And if there's anyone in the Trump circle and the United States, there's bipartisan consensus on very little in our country, but in terms of this. But I think Musk, with his Tesla plant, with other business interests in China, has really relations with China. And so I think you're certainly going to see a testing of the waters and a potential for better relations, although I would say right now, on both sides, the situation is fraught. And President Xi Jinping has a vote on this as well. And his actions in the last few years in the region and in the building up of his military are not entirely promising at the moment.
Lara, if I can come to you, on China, the DeepSeek has taken the world by storm, right? I mean, it's just, the stock in the US stock market, the Dow just fell. I mean, what does it mean for the US leadership of artificial intelligence? And we're talking about this on a day when this artificial intelligence summit is being held in Paris, co-chaired by India and France, where they're trying to look at, a middle path. Neither an US model nor a China-led model. So what does it mean for the US leadership on the artificial intelligence, the DeepSeek in particular? It's a Sputnik moment, as many say.
Yeah, well, look, I think we've all recognized that AI is going to be a fantastic opportunity, but also comes with the need for governments and society to rethink our rules. The question is whether you want something that powerful to sit in the hands of any country, right? And it is, I think, healthy to have a number of versions of AI, although I'm sure some people would dispute that. And I think competition is generally a good thing, and as we have seen with DeepSeek, it is the fact that China had to create something under more difficult circumstances that led it to create a model which is more efficient. You can then argue about how it was created and where the IP came from, but I would argue you could argue about that in the core models. The question I think that was really interested in the plenary session this morning with Mr. Lee from Baidu is the discussion around where will returns flow, right? At the moment, as he's described, all the returns flow to the chip makers, to the infrastructure providers, and there's very little to show for it on the application layer. With a model like DeepSeek, with completely different economics, the question is whether businesses and governments could apply those models with different economics to solve big societal problems and indeed small business problems, and whether that actually, in fact, is a positive thing for the world as a whole. So more competition, more variation, less concentration of power, in my view, is probably healthier for how this develops. It's an incredibly powerful technology, and you probably don't want just one person ruling it.
So Would you say this would be a Manhattan Project for steroids? Or?
Yeah, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor for President Biden, in an interview he did with Axios, said this race for the commanding heights of artificial intelligence would make the Manhattan Project look like a small thing. But that makes it sound like more of a physics problem, which was the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project obviously created a nuclear weapon, and you can imagine how the world would have been different if the Third Reich had got there first. And so on the one hand, you want to get to the commanding heights. On the other hand, it's collaborative. Tens of billions of dollars are being invested by the UAE and others in artificial intelligence with U.S. partners. The G42 Microsoft partnership is a great model of things going forward. But the difference between Manhattan Project and artificial intelligence is at that point things were coming from the government. And then and also the internet was a project that then went to the private sector. The breakthroughs in artificial intelligence are coming from the private sector. Right. And then the government has to figure out what are the consequences of that. I think what we have to understand is it's one of the most disruptive, promising, and perilous technologies the world has ever seen. And so government will have to intervene and set standards and ensure that we tap this for the best outcomes and then prevent the worst outcomes. We've learned through the internet that a digital divide can make richer people richer and poorer people poorer. And the question is, have we learned enough so that the benefits of artificial intelligence can be more equally spread? Because if they are, then the dissemination of education, of healthcare, of so many other good things could be accelerated. But on the other hand, there's also dark sides that can be accelerated as well. So I think we're in. I always tell my friends, if in the next 4 years, everyone seems to be talking about President Trump, but artificial intelligence is going to have a hell of a lot more impact on where the world is 4 years from now than Donald Trump will have.
Thank you. One quick last. Laura, what do you think is the Global South heading among this competition between two big powers?
Well, look, I think it's undisputable that the Global South is going to become more important. I think the latest stat is 18% of the world GDP concentrated in 133 countries, but 30% of trade and 62% of the population. So the one undisputable thing is that trade between the Global South, the importance of the Global South is only going to rise. There's probably too little being spoken at this conference and everywhere else about that, and so I think I'm optimistic. If you're sitting in the Global South, the future is probably looking quite bright.
Thank you. I'm afraid we have run out of time. It was a brilliant session, and to discuss President Trump and China, I think even 3 days are not enough. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
So I'd like to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely. So I'll directly mail you.
Sorry?
We are now coming into the real, blockbuster ministerial sessions. And the title of this is Will economic alliances drive the future of global influence? And to discuss this, we have two very interesting and knowledgeable personalities. His Excellency Pedro Reis, the Minister of Economy of Portugal. Welcome. And to be joined by him from the host, Dr. Thani Al-Zaudi, the Minister of State for Foreign Trade and Minister of Economy. Thank you, Dr. Zaidi. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Zaidi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we start with you. I know Europe have an inflection point in this turmoil of, and the new presidency in US and everybody is whether Europe will be dumped by US or not is just the refrain in the letters. So what do you think the regional partnerships and economic coalitions play in reshaping global trade dynamics and how they can be used to address shared challenges? We today have shared challenges all over the world.
Thank you. Good morning, dear friends. Basically, I think that Europe is on the crossroads. All this volatility in the world might work as a wake-up call also for Europe. And that's interesting because it can speed up the reforms we are conscious we have to implement. The way I see it is basically we have a lot of complexity on the world level, so the challenges are huge and cannot be approached by a single region. And that's go without saying by a single country. There's a sense of urgency that's positive for change, because the name of the game we are facing is change, whether one way or another. And there's a perception of multi-dependency. Now, and all these convenes into historic times. There's a change of cycle, even for mankind and for economies and for governments. And we can either go two ways. One is the direction, the avenue of, if you want, fragmentation, transactional approach, and you'll enter into a reciprocity deal. The other way, which I believe it's the best case and it's positive for Europe, is either if we go for collaborative, but it calls for creativity. And just ending up these initial remarks, in Europe, it's all about deregulation. It's all about getting back to basics of extract sustainable growth. And you extract sustainable growth through innovation, through scale, through agility, through less bureaucracy, through less taxes, through less tariffs. And that, I think, the fact that you have a new European Commission, you have an existential quest for the meaning of our alliance, might open a window of a new beginning in which Europe wants to integrate, and namely with other regions. GCC is a case, as well as namely for Portuguese economy, Africa and Latin America.
Dr. Zaidi, UAE today is not only a regional power, economic power, but it's also emerging as a global economic power. You're investing big time in Africa, if I understand, and South Asia, and also looking into Eurasia in the big way. How does, economic alliances in this fit into UAE's larger broad economic footprints? Because in 2023, UAE also joined BRICS. How do you see this? It will help UAE's spread the goodwill and boost the global and the regional economy.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhry, and it's a real pleasure to have my friend Pedro here with us. When it comes to global alliances, and the UAE international economic policy and diplomacy, diversity has been always a key aspect of the whole direction of our international engagements, trade relations, as well as investments. If you look at the history, and I'm going to quote what my colleague, His Excellency Mohammed Grigawi, said earlier, if we don't learn from the history, we will not move on, and will not be able as well to sort out our today's issue. For the last 100 years, globalization has played a major role, but globalization has been depending on regional groups and regional alliances. And what do we mean by regional alliances? It means that removing most of the issues that His Excellency Pedro was talking about, the tariffs, non-trade barriers, taxes, smoothing the process, less bureaucracy, etc. And from there, the whole globalization started building those blocks with each other. So we had that excellent growth globally. Now, coming back to the last 15 years experience of the regional blocks, economic blocks globally, they start working among themselves and harming the growth and the engagement with others, saying that, looking at their blocks as the only block which should only, they have to maintain their own relations. And it slowed down many of the potential engagements globally. Now, after COVID, things has been changing, and even for us in the UAE, it has been there even before that, because you can't predict how things are moving by slowness within economic groups and economic blocks, not responding to the global needs, not learning from the best practices. So you have to start building these economic alliances. So what we did, we start shifting the investments. It's not only the one side of the whole global that attracts our investments. We have to diversify. There is high risk, but there is high revenue from those investments. Africa is one of the examples. Second one, and the most important thing when it comes to economic alliances, we start building alliances that is suiting our own interests without constraining us and confining the movements and the engagements that we're doing. BRICS is one of them. What is the added value of BRICS? Away from politics, it's all about economy. Those nations and the member states are going to dominate most of the growth 25 years from now. Why don't we be part of this? We don't need to get involved in the geopolitics, because geopolitics has already the multilateralism which is tackling that. And if they're not moving there, why we're bringing the issues in those new economic alliances? Second thing, the alliances is becoming more based on mutual interest. Does not mean that me and Pedro that we agree on everything, but there is a common understanding, common interest between us, and we have to work on that common interest between both of us. And from there, you start building the network that you're doing based on the interest and mutual interest between you and different nations. Third one, which is as well we see as a critical point, how many superpower and poles and polars around the world? There are four or five. We're talking about US, EU, China, India, and to a certain extent ASEAN. The rest of the world has more than 190 nations. Those nations can create another bloc and work together, while we're just keeping our focus on the 4 or 5 superpower which is fighting against each other. So from there, the new economic analysis is happening because of the mutual interest, because of the potential, and because of the growth that is going to be brought from those.
You talked about bureaucracy, right? I mean, when I talk to people in the government of India, they talk a lot about the European Union bureaucracy, and which is also kind of delaying the FTA with India, between EU and India. And I'm just giving an example. How do we break down this? And you're signaling that something new, because Portugal has played a very important role in the European Union. So how does we reduce bureaucracy in terms of and it's essentially European Union is an economic project, right? I mean, and how can it be like maybe a little bit like ASEAN or maybe like GCC, which is more cohesive in that way? And I mean in terms with the outside.
Let me kindly disagree in the fact that Europe is more bureaucratic. I guess it's really a challenge at all level. You have bubbles that are more agile, but what I hear from investors that are connected and exposed to the several markets, it is that one of the main challenges is tackling red tape. On that, I guess we can agree. And by the way, basically, what I see is that if you take politics out of the agenda, you have, without being romantic, people want to connect. The economies need to connect. You have so long value chains nowadays. The international trade, 50%, it's about business to business. It's about components. You cannot just untangle it. You cannot plug off the world economy. Namely, when we are facing huge challenges, climate extreme events, population displacement, cyber security threats, you name it, and then go on and on and on. So at the end of the day, it's all a race either into a common understanding and a level playing field based on fairness, based on respect for each culture, removing the infantilization of the discussion all over the world on politics. And maybe when you get into that, you have the key to get, again, gross, speedy models. And what I hear, even on this visit of mine, and once again, congratulations, is one of these summits are of extreme importance for us all. It's networking, it's exchange of ideas, it's enabling exchange of views. And if we get to the main roles, the main drivers of what we in Europe want to achieve, if you take Draghi report, if you take Letters report, if you take the nowadays the compass for competitiveness, if you take the Green Deal, at the end of the day, we all come to action plan. It's time to go from words, and I do believe that because we can be quite innovative, we can be quite a hub, a safe harbor for talent attraction. We can be a bridge between continents, regions, markets. If we find our own way, and I believe we are on the brink of that, then we can reconnect with the world. And let me use my friend's expression, plasticity. You have to find out a blending between identity and cooperation, between execution and strategy. Life is all about balance and respect.
If you allow me, Mr. Chaudhry, I want to comment here because I want to give an example. The old economic blocks, regardless of the EU, MEPS, or GCC, and some other economic blocks, they're having an issue. And the issue is that the legislator, they don't talk to the implementer, they don't talk to the business people. Right. And not only that, the centralization which they built, it killed the business in the member states itself. We have very excellent model here in the UAE. We're 7 emirates, but we at the federal level, we don't over-regulate. We just give the general guidelines for this, and we keep the different models in the 7 emirates to implement and do whatever they want based on the best practices. And the agility and the efficiency that is happening is unbelievable. If we are taking that model in a small nation, as a UAE, and apply it in a bigger group, we're going to outperform. But we have to learn from the challenges, the mistakes that happen in those economic blocks, and we should not replicate it in any new economic blocks. Now, His Excellency mentioned the businesses. Business is going to be driving most of the investments, and without giving them the right ecosystem, and without us as a teams, regardless governments, legislators, and implementers, we don't talk to each other, we will not be able to assist and facilitate the business movements and implementation of their projects.
I would like to now talk about a little bit of the CEPA framework. How does these have enhanced collaboration or can enhance collaboration between countries in the different regions?
SIPA is 3 years old as a project, and we outperform. We completed 25 agreements in less than 3 years, which is historically has not been done. And we did it with the nations that everyone, Indonesia, etc. But the minute that you put only your vision is trade and investments and economy, everyone will start moving. The minute that you bring different factors into the table, everyone will back off and say, we're not interested. Why some of the agreements with the EU, for example, is taking 27 years and it's not moving? Why agreements between different blocs is taking 25 years and more than 20 years? Because we will start bringing non-trade and non-economic factors into the topic. Now, the 25 agreements which we're having, it's all with emerging economies and small nations, and we're building our own networks. What is the consequences? It's not only about trade, it's about investment, it's about companies expanding, it's about movement of people, movement of technology, and the result is amazing so far. Last year we had an excellent growth in our our international foreign trade non-oil. We exceeded the global average of growth by 7 times. The growth was 14.6%. The global trade in goods growth was almost 2%. So it shows what is the potential, how such a framework can boost the bilateral trade between us and the rest of the world. With India itself, the growth was almost more than 28%. With one nation. Right. Imagine how is that with many other countries. With Georgia, the growth was almost 56%. Right. With Turkey, is around 12%. And we can name the nations when it comes to bilateral trade. The other thing, the flow of investments is going. We're even monitoring the number of companies that is opening to attract those markets.
Change the mindset. Once again, let the companies breathe, let off the artificial barriers that are blocking global investments. Change the mindset. Nowadays, it's not for countries to choose which business investors they have. It's for companies to choose in which countries they will invest. I'm a profound admirer of what the sovereign funds, the global companies out of UAE that I find here. Very pragmatic, very professional, very analytical, and with a world view. And a sense of the strategic clusters, the technology driver, the DNA, the metamorphosis that's going on the world level energy cluster, and so on and so on and so on. And then what the investment, my perception and the investments that we have in Portugal from the region, what they go for scalability. They go for innovation, for expertise, for deep strategy, and they'll go for access for markets. So you don't have to look very far away. Just replicate what I see happening here. It's a good bold case because it's a blending between tradition and the future, between science and entrepreneurship, between governments and private sector. By the way, that's the only way ahead, private-public partnerships. We have to reinvent them. And then we'll have to get back to the drawing room on the world institutions and World Trade Organization and so on and so on. We have to redesign the architecture for a new world out of the conflicts and the coupling and so on. It is saying that it's urgent to sort out a way of sustainable growth. You don't get there by yourself. Peace is a key for growth, and growth is a key for equilibrium, for humanity. So this is not romantic. This is the only roadmap into the future. And our generation is called to rise up for these challenges because, for example, through AI, whether it's a new technology, whether this is the seed for an hybrid reality or not species, but things will accelerate quantumly in the next years, not decades, and we don't have any more time to lose after so many millennials of history. And you know that when you free innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, initiative, you respect the individual, namely if it works for the collectivity, you get there. If you deny this, you don't go up or you go down. At the end of the day, the diagnosis is done in the world. It's all about the courage to implement, the courage of execution, and get back hope for the people and for the economies.
Would you agree? I mean,
I totally agree. Well, if we really want to push the economic investments, trade, we have to understand the language. We have to be very transparent, and we should ensure that the ecosystem is built around the flexibility to those business people to do whatever they want without us disturbing their businesses. And I'm sure the company which His Excellency was talking about here in UAE, they haven't met with us, they haven't been engaged with us. They just like the ecosystem, and from there they flourish. If we ensure that is available to the business people, they don't need anything else. They don't need money. They don't need the support. They just want to make sure that there is an ecosystem for them to flourish, and from there they can go and grow their businesses.
thank you so much. Yeah, we have run out of time. Thank you. Pleasure. Yeah, I'll see you in India.